by any religious standards, by any orthodox religious standard, that it really cries out for analysis. There is, of course, a Jewish connection in that the temple is itself Solomon's temple. There is the idea that this is a recreation of Solomon's temple. So that automatically is Jewish. And the Book of the Law, as they call it, which is present in every Masonic initiation ceremony, can be the Bible, or it could be the Torah, or it could be the Quran, or almost anything which is a religious scripture. It's a requirement of a Freemason that they believe in God. Past that, there's no other requirement. If you're an atheist, you cannot become a Freemason. That's about the only stricture where that's concerned. But there's the Solomon's Temple is there. The various initiation rites, there are three major ones, first, second, and third degree, are all based on Solomon's Temple. So that's there. But you know, there's the central ceremony of the third degree is the death and resurrection of the initiate, of the third degree initiate. And this could be seen as a Christian allusion, even though, again, it refers directly to the building of Solomon's Temple in the ritual. But it could be seen as something else. And I have made a case in the Secret Temple, and people are going to find difficulty with this, I know. I've made a case that I do believe that there is a Templar origin to some of these rituals and to the Masons themselves. Historians have attacked this idea because they say, well, the Knights Templar were suppressed in the early 14th century. By 1317, 1320, there were no more Templar, Knights Templars officially anywhere. And the Freemasons didn't come around till the 18th century, till the United Grand Lodge in the 1700s. Well, that's not exactly true. There have been Masonic initiation rituals discovered that date back to the 14th century in Scotland. So you had Masons going through the 3 degrees of initiation, well, in those days 2 degrees of initiation, almost identical in format to the way Masons are initiated today. And these rituals were in documents that have been dated to the late 14th century, about 50 or 60 years after the suppression of the Knights Templar. So that's pretty close. And their leader, the leader of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake, was killed, was handed over by people he trusted, a pope and a king. He was conspired against and murdered. And I think that this murder at the heart of the third degree is an allusion to Jacques de Molay and the Templar history. Mm-hmm. So I believe that there is a Templar connection, and I try to make that case in the Secret Temple, that we have to revisit this, that it wasn't just some kind of romantic idea that linked the Templars to the Masons. After all, the Catholic Church condemned Freemasonry most clearly, just as they had the Templars at the time. There was a lot of anti-church sentiment in those early days of Freemasonry, and I think it may stem from a Knights Templar connection. But this is something that I think that I found, and I'll let my documentation speak for itself. It's certainly open to interpretation, and I'm certainly willing to accept a different point of view.
What about the whole idea that these two different, seemingly, at least historically, then rivaling factions, the Knights Templar and the Catholic Church, that they actually have been brought back together now? Not too many years ago, we had something called the Chinian Parchment, I think, which kind of cleared the Knights Templar on what they've been doing, and the Catholic Church have once again embraced them and brought them back into the Catholic Church. What's your take on that? What does that mean?
Well, it's interesting because obviously the documents have been in the Vatican archives for the last 700 years. So somebody knew that this had happened, that the Templars had been cleared of all the charges of heresy and blasphemy. This is a very important document. It says pretty much what we all thought all along, was that the Templars were set up, that this was a power grab by the King of France at the time, Philippe le Bel, who basically forced the Pope to undertake this major investigation of the Templars. So this embrace of the Templars, well, the Pope forgave the Jews famously, about 50 years ago. They forgave Galileo not too long ago. I mean, they're doing all of this. They're trying to go back and redress some of their sins. I don't know that the Templars themselves, I mean, there are no Templars anymore unless we count the Freemasons as Templars. So what does that do for the church? It's kind of easy to forgive Galileo because he's been dead for a couple of hundred years. He's not going to sue you. The Knights Templar are not going to sue you. It's pretty safe. So who's left? So I think it's nice gesture, but it doesn't, mean very much in the grand scheme of things. But what does it do for the Freemasons? Freemasons are still under, a shadow. Pope John Paul I was going to clean out the Freemasons from the Catholic Church because he realized that so many bishops and even cardinals were members of Propaganda Due of this Italian Masonic lodge. And of course he died 30 days into his papacy under mysterious circumstances. So I don't know. I'm a little cautious about when the church, does things like this. I'm always afraid of Greeks bearing gifts. So I don't know what the church has in mind with all of this, but I don't know if it's anything sinister, but I have an open mind.
Yeah, and I think he even died 33 days after, which might be a hint in terms of numerology to Freemasonry. And then you have the whole, again, tying back to the P2 thing that you mentioned before with Banco Ambrosiano and the whole, Vatican banker, and the fact that he was killed in a kind of semi-Freemasonic ritualistic way under the Blackfriars Bridge in London. Forget his name now, but... So that's also things that are going on. Do you think that all of this is to blame Freemasonry for some of these things, or what does that hint to anything at all in terms of symbolic value?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at the symbolic value of this, it's of course really stunning. I mean, I write about coincidence a great deal, as you know, in Sinister Forces. So this always had, tremendous resonance for me. So looking at the 33 days of Pope John Paul I, of course, is very significant because he was enemy of Freemasonry. And I think it was Roberto Calvi, wasn't it, who was hung under the bridge at Blackfriars Bridge. Again, a member of P2, and was he being silenced? And the Freemasons have come out and said, well, not really. This is not really that significant for this reason or that reason. But as usual, their arguments were very hollow to me. Just as their arguments that the Freemasons had nothing to do with the revolution, was quite hollow. They insist that they had nothing really to do with that. That they were not organized, they were not conducting, they didn't have safe houses, where Masons could meet and during the revolution, which is all nonsense. It's been proven true. So I don't know. As I say, the sinister implications of all of this are much broader than identifying a particular person and a particular event or a particular organization. When we see the resonance flow out from these events with symbolic numbers and symbolic locations, you ask yourself, is this deliberate? Was it really a conspiracy by human beings who got together and decided this was how it was going to be done? Or was it something deeper, something darker, what I call the sinister forces? Are these coincidences then evidence of something more cosmic at work behind the scenes? Which doesn't mean that people are not involved. As I mentioned in Sinister Forces, I believe that people have been able to get in touch with these darker forces and perhaps manipulate them for their own ends. So it's the perfect way to commit a crime, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's the long distance, voodoo doll approach, to kill at a distance, or to, The Men Who Stare at Goats now is the famous film that's going to be opening this week in New York, which is based on remote viewing and an actual military program of trying to kill at a distance. So, when you're dealing with that kind of evidence, spectral evidence like that, you're really, then you just throw up your hands and say, well, okay, who do we prosecute in a case like this?
Yeah. So if we kind of a little bit continue on that theme, the dark forces or the sinister forces, and tie that together with the possibility that these are contacted through the aid of rituals and ceremonies and so forth, and tied together with Freemasonry. I've heard from some researchers who even claim that when you participate in a traumatizing initiation like that allegedly goes on within Freemasonry when you're being brought into the lodge, that in itself can be viewed upon as a form of mind control, that you're